Texas Trump fan stands up to ABC's lies, buys Billboard to set record straight. A President Trump supporter from none other than the great state of Texas is using Billboard space to slam the fake news network that is ABC over its coverage of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. Courtney of Boerne, Texas, placed an ad saying he had grown up with ABC News but has been downed by what the network has turned into by reporting such fake news as the so-called Russian collusion narrative the Democrats conjured up in order to remove a sitting president. Theomandashia. Sign the petition. Perfect. Boerne man renounces ABC News, shows support for Trump with large billboard pic. Pamela Moore 13 June 22, 2017. And the best part of this whole thing is if you actually take the time to try to access the Twitter picture you find this. It appears the billboard has upset the Twitter overseers. In a statement to San Antonio, Texas NBC affiliate, Courtney said, ABC News was the only channel I watched as a child growing up in Texas, but I think they have lost touch with America and forgotten the working man. Courtney then had an awesome takedown of the media by accusing them of acting in coordination with the Hillary Clinton campaign during the 2016 presidential election. Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign was funded by the Clinton Foundation in close coordination with the media, and now we're seeing them try to fix what they could not fix during the election, Courtney said. They are doing everything they can, night after night, to create narratives and sway people's direction to impeach Donald Trump. The billboard has been confirmed to remain up for 2 months. This is exactly what the media does not understand yet. We the people have figured out their game and we would not be playing it anymore. Ever since the far-left liberal Walter Cronkite, who had the ear of most of American during the 60s, negligently said on his third-rate news propaganda show that the Vietnam War was lost, the mainstream media took it upon themselves to form public opinion rather than just report the news. And although it took the American people 50 years, and an outsider as their president to understand, they are not having it anymore. Make America great again and do not let the Democrat lapdog media dictate the agenda anymore. Here is more on Cronkite via accuracy in media. It is wrong to speak ill of the dead. On the other hand, it is an insult to the intelligence of the American people to pretend that Walter Cronkite was the voice of God and universally credible, as Mara Liasson put it on Fox News Sunday. The terrible truth is that Walter Cronkite symbolized liberal media bias and used that bias with disastrous consequences for our nation and the world. His latest cause was world government and the destruction of American sovereignty. We found out after his retirement that he was not only a liberal, which was evident from his broadcasts, but a one-worlder. In appearances before the World Federalist Association, which favors world government financed by global taxes, he called for the U.S. to renounce some of its sovereignty and pass a series of United Nations treaties, many of which are now being pushed in the Senate by President Barack Obama. Cronkite called for an international Liberty Bell. He called for Senate ratification of the treaty to ban land mines, the Law of the Sea Treaty, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, the Convention to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women, and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Most important, he said, we should sign and ratify the treaty for a permanent international criminal court, which would violate U.S. constitutional rights by enabling foreign judges to prosecute American citizens and imprison them in foreign jails. Cronkite was determined to use the UN and its treaties to inhibit the ability of the U.S. to act in its own national security interests. One of Cronkite's appearances, where he accepted a Global Governance Award, is available on video, at an event which featured the wife of then UN boss Kofi Annan and a video from then First Lady Hillary Clinton. The same Global Governance Award had also been given to former Time magazine columnist Strobe Talbott, another advocate of world government, later a top State Department official in the Clinton administration and subsequently named as a special contact of the Russian intelligence service by a Russian spy. Talbott now runs the liberal Brookings Institution. In 1988, 7 years after his retirement as anchorman of the CBS Evening News, Cronkite addressed a left-wing People for the American Way conference and denounced President Reagan for the unilateral military actions in Grenada, when the U.S. military evicted a communist gang, and Libya, when Reagan ordered a military strike in retaliation for the acts of terrorism against Americans. Cronkite despised Reagan's peace through strength policies and said that the smartest president he ever met was Jimmy Carter. Later, Cronkite denounced Operation Iraqi Freedom and attacked the Bush administration for its arrogance. His role in the Vietnam defeat is being reported as if it were a highlight of his career. Yet, his misreporting helped create the conditions for a premature U.S. military withdrawal, leading to the loss of the lives of 58,000 Americans in vain, not to mention the millions of additional deaths caused in Vietnam and Cambodia by the Communists. Cronkite's public verdict that the 1968 Tet Offensive was a defeat for the U.S. is widely seen as a turning point in American support for the war. Cronkite falsely claimed that the Viet Cong had held the American embassy for 6 hours and that the offensive went on for 2 months. The facts show that Tet was actually a major defeat for the communist enemy. Accuracy in Media founder and longtime AIM report editor Reed Irvine noted that Cronkite contributed a great deal to our defeat in Vietnam. Beyond Vietnam, Cronkite got it wrong on one of the big issues: freedom versus Soviet communism. In the 1974 book, TV and National Defense, Dr. Ernest Lefevre examined how CBS News programs for 2 years had covered national security issues and concluded that the news organization was an active advocate of several national defense positions which were frequently critical of U.S. policy, and usually from a perspective that implied or called for a lesser military commitment and lower defense expenditures. In 1972, for instance, the CBS Evening News aired nearly 1,400 presentations supporting the dovish view. Contrary or hawkish positions were aired only 79 times. Asked about the charges, Cronkite displayed the bias that guided his news program, saying that there are always groups in Washington expressing views of alarm over the state of our defenses. We do not carry those stories. The story is that there are those who want to cut defense spending. The most trusted man in America did not deserve our trust. In 1979, he gave an interview to the Soviet magazine, Literary Gazette, and told Vitaly Kubish that the Soviet threat was most likely a myth. According to the magazine, Cronkite went on to say that I will never believe in a Soviet threat. Shortly after the interview was published, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. He retired as CBS Evening News anchorman in 1981. Cronkite told AIM founder and editor Reed Irvine that he had been misquoted by Kubish, and that he had a tape recording of the interview to prove it. The tape never materialized. Irvine ran into Kubish at an international media conference and the Soviet journalist said the interview was entirely accurate. After Ronald Reagan took office as president and proceeded to build up U.S. national defense capability, in the wake of the disastrous Jimmy Carter years, CBS News acted to counter the Reagan effort. They aired a 5-part program, The Defense of the United States, in which Cronkite appeared to tell us that the relationship with the Soviet Union was dominated by the same old fears and doubts because we did not have a genuine dialogue with the Soviet communists. Irvine noted at the time of the broadcast that CBS gave us the Kremlin view that it is the United States, not the Soviet Union, that is striving for an impossible military superiority, while creating fantasies about Soviet aggression. However, Irvine noted that Reagan was not deterred by the CBS News assault, but that the momentum behind his election mandate to rebuild America's defense was weakened somewhat by the constant repetition by the media that he was spending too much on national security. Cronkite's accomplices in this crusade included Dan Rather, his successor, and Bill Moyers, then with CBS and now with public television. For many years Irvine drew attention to the persistent anti-defense bias of CBS News and reported, "One has to wonder why the anti-defense bias is so strong and persistent at CBS. My own feeling is that it is a reflection of the views enunciated by Walter Cronkite that show a benign view of the Soviet Union." In 1989, while expressing the hope that the Soviet archives would one day be opened to demonstrate how the Kremlin manipulated American journalists such as Walter Duranty of The New York Times, who had lied and helped Stalin cover up his monstrous crimes that resulted in the deaths of 7 to 10 million Ukrainians, Irvine added that it will be fascinating to see what they say about Walter Cronkite, who spent 2 years in Moscow after World War II as a UPI correspondent and who has been remarkably restrained in his criticism of that country ever since. This may sound harsh, but the fact is that Cronkite was consistently wrong about Soviet intentions, and his attitude dominated CBS News coverage of the old Soviet Union. After the Soviet collapse, Irvine wrote a 1990 AIM report about those personalities who had taken a benign or even adulatory view of communism and the Soviet Union in the years since the 1917 Bolshevik coup d'état. Cronkite was on this list of doves, which also included Hanoi Jane Fonda. It is fine to recognize Cronkite for his long life and many years as anchorman of the CBS Evening News. He captured important moments and reached millions. But do not pretend that he was an objective journalist. Cronkite's journalism cost lives and could have cost many more, had it not been for a president named Reagan who had the courage to bypass the major media and go directly to the American people with the truth about our crumbling defenses when America was increasingly vulnerable. The country was very lucky to have him in that seat as anchorman, Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace said, in paying tribute. No. America was fortunate to have escaped his pernicious influence. Now we have to try to escape the fate of world government that Cronkite made his primary cause later in life, which has been adopted by President Barack Obama and Pope Benedict XVI.